Folks, according to the computer, it's 6 p.m. I guess the clock is a little slow on the wall there. So we'll start the meeting. And would you like to do a roll call or do we need to do that?
Yes, I'll do a roll call.
Okay.
Gary,
Here.
Annette,
Here.
Joyce,
Here.
Larry.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Ashley. David,
Here.
Jeff, and Jalen.
Here.
Okay. Do I have a motion for approval of the minute meetings from December 28th?
So moved.
Okay, the second, okay. Anybody everything look okay? Everybody in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And do we have any amendments, or first let's do approval of do we have any amendments to the meeting agenda for tonight? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting agendas for tonight.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we have one person, John, in the audience. Would you like to head up to the microphone and say whatever you'd like to say, sir?
Thank you. And my name is John Burgess. I want to thank everybody for all the work you're putting into this. It's ongoing and marvelous to see what you're accomplishing. So thank you. We have a housing problem. It includes the entire spectrum of our population, including the middle class elderlies who have lived here for their entire lives and who want to continue living here as long as they can afford it. So often the answer is manufactured homes, AKA mobile homes. Petersburg has always been blessed, I think, with a scattered mixture of mobile homes that fit very well with our environment and our society. We've been blessed with good planning commissions. And I think we need to give any planning commission more latitude with where mobile homes can be used. Zoning maps are far from perfect. And so often we have, like any community, slivers or some parcels that just really don't quite fit in the zone that is mapped. Could be for instance, a residential lot that is surrounded by industrial or vice versa, and or commercial as well. And so, yes, you can request zoning changes, but that's often out of reach of individuals. And that by itself creates controversies and conflicts that really don't exist sometimes. The conditional use permit process is, I think, democracy in action and very fair. So please give consideration to allowing manufactured homes applications to all zoning districts and let the CUP process be the verdict. I respect my neighbors and peers' decisions if they say no, but when the planning ordinance says no, no matter what, before considering actual merits, that's problematic for our housing problem. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And we will be talking about a manufactured starter home development later in the agenda. So we are trying to address that. But enough said. Okay. Okay, under anybody online?
There is not.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to new business. And with us tonight, we have Carl, who's here to answer all of our questions. And I know most everybody in the task force has seen the emails, and Gary several weeks ago identified 9 properties to have Utility Director Hagerman take a look at and see how feasible it is to bring, power, water and sewer. And I was talking to Jody, the, Finance Director today, and she identified another parcel that you might want to add to the list, which is behind the Bible Church, which she thought up by Sandy Beach would also be another property to take a look at. She had looked at that originally, and so maybe we could add that to our list to see if that's another developable property at some point. So with that, Carl, do you want to have the floor and tell us what you know?
Sure,
Or
yeah.
maybe what you don't know.
Thanks for having me. I do appreciate all the work that the task force is doing. It's, as John said, there's a big need right now, so I'm glad that you guys are looking into it. Happy to help. A lot of great questions, Gary sent me. I'm not sure how you want me to proceed, if I should just go through the documents that I provided or just answer questions. I'm not sure.
What do you think, Gary? What's your druthers, since you're the originator of a lot of this?
Well, I guess just, it's pretty lengthy to go through every single item, so. My original questions about the proposed subdivisions. You did, write back with answers to most of those, but, some of them were pretty big items, and what do you, the biggest one probably was the mobilization for, bringing their equipment on, taking it off. It was over $100,000, I think, on all of them. Do we have the ability to have local preference when you put out RFPs?
Up to a certain point, I think there's a cost cutoff where that doesn't come into play any longer. But up to a certain project value, it does come into play. It's a 10% cost preference. So basically a local contractor could be 10% over another low bidder and still get the work. It's really hard to say, like I put in my response, it's hard to say if a local would actually get the work. They have a really good chance. And I did look up some mobilization fees for recent wastewater projects that we've done on Ira 2 Street and Casino Street. And yeah, the mobilization, fees on that for local contractors that got the work, less than $20,000. So it's, they don't have a whole lot of expense in moving their equipment from point A to point B
Right.
in Petersburg.
Right, they're not barging their stuff in.
No. But again, my point was we can't guarantee that that will be the case, that a local contractor will get that. And there could be a large mobilization fee from somebody out of town.
Mhm.
Most of that, the subdivision estimates overall are rough order of magnitude, which is meaning that they're very conservative, very high costs, so that, nobody's surprised by the cost of a project if we actually move forward. The only way to know for sure how much it's going to cost is put it to bid. That's the only way to know for sure.
And just so everybody else in the board or committee understands, there's a whole bunch of bids, or we had P&D, which is a contractor up in Juneau. The assembly had several areas that they thought would be potential for development. And the mobilization cost is $100,000 that it costs to mobilize to do any of these individual projects. And I think the input of what you're trying to do, Gary, was trying to see if we could get some of these shocking numbers down a little bit, if I'm
Yeah,
correct.
because, one of them was close to 200,000. That's on the bigger projects because they're barging in their dump trucks and their graders and all that stuff. But if we could get local, then they're right here, like, $20,000, I think would be pretty standard. So you can save a big chunk right there. And I noticed all of them, and I went through all of your explanations, but all of them seem to be calling for drains, what would you call those? Yeah, the storm drains. Is that, none of the other, none of Severson's has them. They don't even have it up in the airport subdivision. Is that something we could just strike out all of them?
Yeah, it's not really part of our standard. It is, I mean, if we want to put in a storm system, we have a standard to do that. But normally, as you've seen in Petersburg, that's not really part of the mix. We use open ditches and make sure that any natural drainages that do exist in a project area don't get impeded by a road or a utility. You know, we put in culverts to keep that natural drainage moving, but we don't necessarily install a storm drain system. Larger communities, and this is probably where PND was coming from, do have to have storm drain systems because they have to collect that water and then basically make sure there's no oil in it before it hits the beach. And we're a small enough community that those regulations don't impact us much, but someday they probably will.
Yeah, and there are several other items that don't save, big money, but some of these did. And then I think one of the bigger ones was the administration costs at the end for having an inspector there. Those are all over $100,000 to $200,000. And I understand the importance of having inspectors make sure it's being done right, and they need to be educated, know what they're looking at. Again, I suppose you don't really know what that's going to cost to actually put it out to bid, and then you're kind of stuck with that cost.
Yeah, and like I put in that response, it's normal for the engineer of the project to provide the inspection. And, these are not $10 an hour jobs by any means, they're over, right around $75 an hour to have an inspector on site. We've gotten, as I put in there, we've gotten around that somewhat by hiring a local that's got some experience. They don't have room and board or per diem costs, so that's a huge savings right off the bat to have a local do that work. And if you can find somebody that's got the experience to help us out, that helps a lot. We've also had local engineers that do, demand a higher price for their work, just do part-time inspection. They're on the job site for half a day or a couple hours a day, just keeping an eye on what's going on and making sure that all the improvements are going in per plan. There's, excuse me, there's not a lot of risk in Petersburg. I wouldn't say these projects that we're talking about are not huge projects. So I think part-time inspection could be a way to save a lot of money, but we won't really know what that savings is until we get to the point where we're moving forward with the project.
Okay, so then switching over to the lots that you talked about here, I'd asked where the services were for sewer and water. And some of them seem to be pretty close, some of them are not close at all. But say for the very first one, the one up there by the Lighthouse Assembly of God Church, across the street from it, and across the street from the cable, the building there that runs the fiber optic cables, 101 or 1001 Augusta Street. This is just for example, and there's another one, actually, a couple where it's even closer than that. But it looks like the water and sewer are on the other side of the lot adjacent to it, on the downhill side, the Lake Street side. So I'm thinking that's probably about 100 feet. I don't know what the size of the lot there is. It doesn't have any, but it looks like that would have to be run up. And would that have to be ran in the center of the road? Or could it stay on the side of the road that lot is on? Do you have any codes that say where you run those?
We do have standards that and we've moved towards putting utilities in the road. The old standard was to put them in the ditch lines, and that's what Lake Street is. Basically, the water's on one ditch line and the sewer's on the other side in the ditch. And the reason we've been moving and then into the road is because we dig that the foundation of those utilities down to hard pan, and we build that back up to where we need it, put the utility in, and then fill up the rest of the road, backfill the road. And it gives us a little more stable road in the long run. Not necessarily coring out the entire road, just to put in utilities, but the trench lines anyway. And so we would probably want to do that, put those utilities in the road and up to that point where they're accessible to that particular lot. As I put in my note, there's a few areas around town where they're kind of right on the edges of our existing distribution and collection systems. And unfortunately, a lot of those areas, the mains that are in the road and closest to these lots aren't really in that great a shape. They've been in place for 40, 50 years and the material isn't great and really needs to be upgraded. In this case, it really would be good to go all the way down to the Valkyrie Street intersection on Oslog. And we've got new main down at that intersection, and carrying that up to Lake Street and beyond to this lot is really the better thing to do in the long run. But in order to get water and sewer available to this particular lot, it would be a fair expense just to get it up there through the road.
Okay. So the other one that's close by there, does it have the same problem with the really old water and sewer? That'd be 1200 Lake Street. And I know the road doesn't go by either side of that particular lot, but it looks like the sewer and water are real close.
Now, that one's in a better shape as far as access to water and sewer. The sewer was replaced in the 90s, coming up, I think it's Galveston Street. And the water line, I want to say it was replaced after that, but I'm having a hard time finding documentation of that project. So that lot, any of these that I'm saying are, water and sewer not stubbed out, but within 50 feet, the cost to develop those, to get utilities to the property line isn't really that great. I venture a guess it's probably, less than $20,000 to do that.
Okay. And so like on this one, it seems to me to be really good because those roads aren't paved. Whereas that other one that goes around the Augusta Street, 1001 Augusta, that's a paved street. So there, I'm sure there's more expense even if you try to dig that in the ditch, there'll be some repair, I would imagine, to the. So then I guess maybe my last question is, so let's take this 1200 Lake Street. If we said, some of these have water and sewer pretty darn close and not going to cost all that much to extend it. And then that way we could get these lots with available sewer and water and then, kind of advertise them, because people don't just go on that map and look for places to buy. I know that. I've looked at them all many times, but is this something that you would say that the borough would have to do as like budgeted into your budget this for next year? And then can a borough crew extend that to that lot? Or is there money available from the lots that were sold last year that could be used to do that? Or do you have to put that out to bid, say, to one of the 3 or 4 local road builders that we have?
Questions. So we don't have money in the water sewer budget to do these connections this year. The cost, if we use Public Works as the labor pool and the equipment operator for a job, which is possible. In the past, we've looked at using the Public Works crew as kind of a wash. They're working, 8 hours a day anyway. If they're putting in water and sewer services, it's the same difference. The general fund, that's who they work for, general fund out of anyway. The materials are the thing, that water and sewer would pick up, and possibly the rock involved with making that happen, the trench lines. As I said, it's probably not a huge expense, but we haven't budgeted for it. The property development fund that you mentioned could be a source. Of course, that is not in the budget either, and it's a fund, just like any other fund, the water fund or the sewer fund, and you need to budget expenses out of that. I'm not saying there can't be a supplemental budget passed through the assembly to allow that to happen sooner, but the budget process is probably the right way to target the right source of money to make these things happen, and also to make sure that the will of the assembly is to follow through with, you know, providing service to these lots. I think the recommendations from this task force to make that happen, you know, if that's the will of the group, will say a lot to the assembly, you know, that this is a priority that we found, and we'd appreciate it if the borough could find a way to do it, you know, for these specific lots that really don't require that much work to make them available to somebody to purchase.
Right, and so so how about if you decided you were gonna put it out to bid for the locals, could that be something that could happen?
Definitely could happen. It's likely gonna be more expensive than if the public works crew did it, because as I said, if the borough decides to basically write off the labor and equipment time and that is expended through the public works crew for installing services, then you won't have that expense, whereas a contractor can't write anything off. You know, they're not gonna do this for free. They're in it to make
No.
money, and they should be. So it's likely going to cost the borough more to contract it out, but maybe there's some will, you know, it's good to keep our local contractors busy and to offer them work. So, you know, that's
So even if
something else.
if you contract it out, then you have to pay that contract, would that money come from the building fund?
Could, yeah, I think it could.
Okay, and then, of course, whatever you can sell that lot for, you know, you're getting that portion of that right back. And it's gonna be on the tax rolls forever, or pretty much.
True.
Okay, so that could be possible, because we're trying to find, you know, answers as quickly as possible for a lot of people. There's a lot of people wanting to build and having a hard time finding lots. So I guess that would be a quick kind of a thing, if we could identify a few of these that have the stuff close to them. And then maybe see if we can recommend that. And like what John was talking about, you know, some of these, you know, I know they're in residential areas, but if we could get them permitted for mobile homes or modular homes or whatever, it might. I think once we got to the point where you say, okay, yeah, we're gonna put this sewer and water in, and we're gonna get it up to there, and then that lot can be available for the borough to sell. And I think that's one of the hard parts that's gonna come in, is how are you gonna sell it? Because the way we've been doing it with, you know, open auction, that could just drive the price up to some person who's only buying it to stash away for 20 years and then resell it. And that's not helping anybody. So if we can get it to
That's
the
a-
point where it's ready to sell, I think then we have to cross that bridge and tackle who can buy it. We want people to buy it that are in need of a home, not an investment.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very hard part of this whole equation. Making property available, as you noted, isn't that difficult, but getting into the hands of the people that you're targeting with the task force is a whole nother matter. And there's no guarantees that I can tell to how to make that happen.
Okay, well, thanks.
I have a question. I was curious how quickly could, like, say we got the funding to do this, how quickly would the turnaround be to get water and sewer in there? Like, is there availability for Public Works to do that if there was money? Or is it like, we don't have time on the books to do this until 5 years from now, or?
Oh, I don't think it would be that long. We'd have to consult with the public works director and see what the schedule is, you know, for the crew, you know, this spring and summer. But my sense is that he could probably schedule in a couple of these. It doesn't take forever to do these jobs. They're fairly small. So as long as there aren't other big projects that they've been planning and putting off that they need to address, I think that good chance that the crew could jump on these and get some done this spring and summer, you know, if the funding's available and the direction is given to do that.
Okay, thanks.
On the assembly level, you know, when the assembly can decide how these are sold, they can put qualifications in them. If the goal is to try and have these be available for low-income housing, you know, if we can might be able to get grant funding from HUD on some of those, just depends upon how we structure the sale, but you can structure it where it says, you know, you have to build something within 2 years. You know, it depends upon whether we're trying to do what our objective is. Are we trying to develop these lots and sell them at fair market value? Or are we going to cut a deal to people with the idea of it being available for starter homes, low income housing? You know, there's any number of ways that we can do this. I mean, the other thing is we're going to talk about later about a land trust. You know, possibly if we could find these lots that were easily, you know, that we could build on right away, we could use those as the beginning of the land trust. I mean, so there's any number of ways we can do it. It just depends upon what sort of direction you guys want to give the assembly on what your recommendation is. You know, and then I have a question for Carl. I know we've been looking at several different subdivisions. I know, Gary, you've talked a lot about the sewer extension. I forget what the name of that specific one was. Where the pump station that we're going to be doing this spring. Yeah, Hungry Point. Is there any sense, I mean, I've heard from people that like right now, there's a lot of lots available up in the Clinca Heights subdivision. If we put another subdivision right next to it, what are we really accomplishing? I mean, is there any of these projects that we've looked at that anybody feels would have a higher value because they're more scenic, they'd be more desirable? I mean, something like that would be a good recommendation from everybody's experience here that we can make for the assembly, because I don't have a clue, to be honest with you.
Well, I think when I wrote to Carl, the Lake Street subdivision was the one I personally saw as the most bang for the buck, because the number of lots that were counted in the PND actually were too low. You could go back through there because some of them are huge. They could easily be divided into 2 lots. So it brought the number from 30 up to 37. And then you do the math and you divide it, you know, by the overall cost, and it came in just slightly lower than the airport subdivision. But of course, the overall price tag, I think, is just slightly higher than, because it is a bigger subdivision. But bang for buck, that was the best one. It would open up the whole other, you know, that side of town, because I think now you have, well, I think there's Wrangell Avenue, and then it kind of stops unless you're in the Lake Street area. But that one just takes off and goes right straight down all the way to Sandy Beach. And that to me looked like the one I would push for if we can get, I mean, obviously the borough doesn't have that kind of money, I'm sure. And doesn't really want to do that, I don't imagine. But if you could find a partner or Clinca Heights or whoever and develop that part and see how it works out. It is a little different scenery over there. It's nice. I mean, there's a few trees over there at least. But that's what I saw when I went through all the subdivisions.
Yeah, I saw that as being one of the, more bang for your buck. So Sarah, as a realtor, do you see any difference in desirability?
Well, if you do have a view of the water, it's going to create a higher value. It's not going to be, you know, if you're on the upper side of the water with an unobstructed view versus out in the muskeg, it's going to be probably could be a $30,000-$40,000 difference in a lot. But I think what we're looking at is because of the cost of construction, I would try and make them put them in the most economical place because then you can have a variety of people affording those lots than if you were just going and looking at only view lots. You then are catering to only a certain economic group.
Okay, and then, Gary, I know you'd sent some correspondence about the Hungry Point, pump station, which is in the works right now. And I know, Carl, you've talked to us quite a bit at the assembly level about that. But the price for developing those lots came back pretty high. So, I mean, I looked at the area there. It looks like there'd be possibly desirable lots, but why is that so expensive there versus some of the other areas?
Muskeg, in the right of ways, is surprisingly deep. That's the biggest reason.
Okay,
We were seeing, 16 feet of depth in the woods, not even in the open muskegs. That's actually less, less material, 12 feet, in the open muskegs when you get through the woods there. So that's a big reason that it's so expensive. I'm looking at, I'm pushing the engineers, working on that pump station project to offer some alternatives to go straight back, on Ramona Street right of way, all the way over to Augusta, and then take the turn down to Sandy Beach Road. I don't know at this point because I'm waiting for cost comparisons to make decisions with, but if there's not a big cost break between the route that we were originally going to go, which is up to Valkyrie Street, and then take an immediate left down to right behind the homes along Sandy Beach Road, and then go along there and then over to Augusta Street. That was the original design study report conclusion. That's the way we should go. Well, if we go straight back and tie into Augusta Street at a higher level, we hit a high point back there where we can stop in the force main and then put in gravity sewer from that point all the way down to Augusta Street. So it provides some opportunity. It makes developing those lots on the gravity system easier than it would be if we just put a force main from point A to point B. And so we're looking at that. I'm hoping that it actually pencils out to where it's would be a decent way to go, because I think it would help. It won't install water line, it won't install power. The road will be pretty minimal, just to put in the sewer system. But if the borough, if the assembly wants to proceed with a subdivision out there, it'll be easier. And all that work that I'm talking about will be taken care of in the wastewater project to upgrade that pump station. So, that, of course, any capital project that's done in water and sewer power all comes back to rates. The ratepayers, fund that work. That service that was approved by the voters a couple of years ago for water and sewer basically covers that. And the rate study that we had, it took into account the cost of this project essentially. So at this point, I'm not thinking that there would be any rate increases associated with the pump station project. But going forward and doing another subdivision someplace else, a large wastewater projects, there would be rate increases included or needed, for a larger project elsewhere. Anyway, so that a lot of words there, but essentially we're looking at that area, and it's feasible that development of some of those lots along that right of way would be easier to develop in the future with water and power and streets. But there has to be some movement, from the assembly to make that happen, I think. And at this point, there's hasn't been a decision made on the design of that, where that force main's going and how that's all gonna happen. But I'm driving it, I'm pushing it along because we really need to get that pump station upgraded.
So you're thinking then of this kind of same thing where you just shoot straight up the hill and then straight down to Sandy Beach? You're getting right now would be without the Lake Street extension and the Valkyrie extension, because on the thing we got, it showed that little spur going down to a cul-de-sac. And then another spur off the other side, which I don't think we need those. And I think that would have lowered the original estimate quite a bit if we could have had it without those. I don't know what the percentage would be, but, well, that'd be interesting. That's great. If you're looking at going straight up, straight down, then you get your cost, and then maybe we can figure out what would it take to throw some water and make that road drivable or whatever.
Yeah, and this, you know, the cost estimates that P&D is working on this project too for us. And so they're very aware, they did all the subdivision estimates. They're very aware of what's going on in Petersburg. And they, but this estimate for the project is actually gonna be a lot more researched than what they did for the subdivisions. That was a pretty rough, quick and dirty type of estimate. Whereas this is, you know, really trying to help us, the borough make good decisions on, you know, what's the best cost in this project, which is the best way to go. So we'll see how that goes. I would add just for one thing that a project like Lake Street or the airport subdivision could be phased over time. You know, we're kind of focused on all or nothing, but you know, coming up from Sandy Beach Road on Lake Street, you could do 10 lots and stop. You know, the water and sewer, the sewer is the big thing. It's going to flow down to Sandy Beach Road if you start on the lower end. So if you develop 10 lots and stop and, you know, sell those lots and come back a few years later and expand it some more, you know, that's one way to lower these costs and work your way into some property over time.
Well, it'd be good to see what your costs come in at, because if you develop 5 or 20, 30, doesn't matter if they're gonna come in at 180,000 a lot to sell them. 'Cause that's really not helping the people we're trying to help.
The lots in the Hungry Point area, like Sarah said, you know, I think if those lots come available, it's hard to say what they're gonna be sold for. And I have a hard time thinking that there'll be entry level lots, you know, first time home builder, that kind of thing. It's hard to say, but I don't know if it really helps at least part of the population that is looking for a new home. It could push people that are older, that are more well off, that are looking for property out on the point to buy and build and then sell their existing homes to somebody that's looking for a place.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of matter of perspective too, because like up in the airport subdivision, even the lowest houses there, my daughter's, for instance, if you're upstairs, you can see the water, you can see clear down towards Juneau, you can see clear down towards the Connie Bay. I mean, that's someone from the prairie sees that and they're, wow, this is amazing. You know, and it's gonna be that way all the way across that, clear over to Lake Street. From up there, it's the same view. It's all the same elevation pretty much. So I see them as entry level, all of them, because the ones at the airport division ended up selling for $15,000 a lot when everybody was done buying them that wanted them. Then they just sold over the counter. I mean, that's pretty cheap, but that's not going to happen anymore. So I think they're all kind of entry level, unless you're on the water or you're right across the street from Sandy Beach Road or Hungry Point Road or whatever, North Nordic. Yeah, those are expensive, but you get one more lot up. And to me, they all, maybe it's just because I've been here too long, but they all look the same. You see the mountains everywhere, you know, no matter where you look. So hopefully we get it under control.
So Carl, I have a question. I'm going a completely different direction. In the comments that you had to Gary, you indicated that the city kind of expected subdivision owners to put in utilities. Is that a really new thing? Because it seemed like we have some subdivisions that don't necessarily had utilities when they were first starting to be sold.
it's a pretty loosely applied standard.
Okay, that's what I was.
And the reason I brought it up is because it has really caused a lot of problems, you know, in some of those areas because the utilities have been not very installed very well. And unfortunately, a lot of it was a result of the city expanding back in the day. And in some areas, they just didn't do a very good job of putting in those mainline services well. And as somebody that had been responsible to try and maintain that infrastructure and replace that infrastructure over the last 30 years, it's better if we just get that settled up front, get the utilities, everything installed correctly, you know, up to the standard that we expect, and then the future problems are going to be absolutely minimal. And that saves money for the borough, and it provides better service to the people that bought the lots. So.
And I totally agree with you there. I just, if we can't find funding to do some of the improvements to the lots that don't have utilities, is it an option for the city not to sell, not to make the improvements, to sell them as is and base the new buyer on having to put those services in themselves?
I would say for the lots that Gary pointed out that are basically have water and sewer mains right in front of them, and it's just the process of installing a 3/4 inch water line and a 6-inch sewer lateral to the property line. I think that would be fine. You know, that's the mains are there. They just have to be accessed and brought. Those services need to be brought to the lot line. Areas that need, extension of water mains or sewer mains, I would not recommend that because people will put in substandard stuff and it'll just be a pain.
So are you talking about like within 50 feet is acceptable? Okay, over 50 feet is kind of, we're stretching it there.
Yeah, I think most of the lots that Gary came up with, the ones that I'm saying are within 50 feet, the 1200 Lake Street, I think that would be okay. Augusta Street is pretty iffy. Sandy Beach Road parcel, that's the number 01003-515. The services are right in Sandy Beach Road. A little expensive to cut in the asphalt and get to them, but if you put that on the property owner, it's not very far away and difficult to do. It might be a little more, it's more costly than working in a dirt road, of course. The Lumber Street lot is, kind of the same boat. There's services right there. They're not stubbed to the lot line, but the lot itself is really
It's not an
not a
attractive
good
lot.
lot. No.
So what about the Oslog property? You've got that it has setbacks on all sides of it. Looking at the way the street lies, it doesn't look like it would be a big deal to have the city vacate one of those setbacks. Is that, in your opinion, is that a doable thing?
I think it is. Where's that? What is? So the 7th Street right of way that goes on one side of that 200 Oslog Street triangle, if that was vacated and added to that lot, I think that lot could be something to use. The way it sits right now, it's just so small and so oddly shaped that it'd be very hard for somebody to develop that. But, thinking outside the box and looking at that 7th Street right of way and incorporating that into that triangle lot, that makes it doable. And the services are in Oslog Street. The mains in Oslog Street adjacent to that lot do need to be upgraded. But if you incorporate the 7th Street right of way into that lot, you've got access on Goffin Street, which is the next street down the hill there.
So
and
how
that-
close do you think that would be?
Well, it would basically be right in front of it.
Oh, okay.
At the corner. So you're looking at, if you look at lot 6A in the drawing, and you incorporated the Seventh Street right of way into the 200 Oslog lot, it turns it into a much larger lot at that point. You might even be able to get 2 lots out of it, maybe. You're adding, you know, a 50-foot swath to that, that area. I honestly don't see utilities needing to be installed in Seventh Street. There are lots kind of back in the woods, around the Lighthouse Church area. But there are other right of ways to access those. Sixth Street is just down the street on Goffin a little ways, and there are provisions in Goffin Street to extend utilities up Sixth Street into that area. It's now just Muskeg. So that could be an option for sure.
Okay, any more questions of Carl? Thanks, Carl. That was a lot of work, pulling that all together and explaining a lot of it to us. I appreciate it.
Sorry about that.
They really are, you know, and you have to dig into that to answer, to get. to the
Well,
point of
yeah, I mean,
recommending.
if you're looking at $120,000 to develop a lot, you know, we already have lots that have utilities and power close to them. It just kind of begs the question, maybe we need to, you know, this might be a good immediate solution to our short-term problem. So thank you. If you want to slide out, you're more than welcome. The next item on the agenda, Sarah, we've talked quite a bit about this. What I'd like to do at the end of the meeting is we need to have a set of recommendations that I can present to the assembly on the meeting in February. February 6th, I believe, is the date. And so guys, kind of be thinking about that, because I want to go down and I want to have a list at the end of the meeting of at least however many you guys want to come up with, you know, but, you know, I think and then my idea was we go to the assembly, we have this list of ideas and recommendations. They can vote on them, say yay or nay. And then if they want us to pursue any of these things, then we'll meet again and come back and look at them. But I don't want to throw so many things at them that it just overwhelms them. So we want to try and have no, I'm sorry, guys. We want to have kind of a concise list, something that's real easy, something that we can present in like 5 minutes per concept and no more. And then we'll get a up or down vote on it. And then if it's an idea that they want us to pursue, then we can come back and pursue that specific idea. And John talked about in his comments a real need, and I agree with him. We have a real need for some sort of cheaper option for people, at least starter homes in town. So Sarah, I'm gonna let you take it away. I've spoken enough.
I did a little bit more homework. I did ask Karen Malcolm. She was able to tell me where water and sewer are for the lots that I had kind of identified as multifamily. And it's that, for those that weren't there, it's between 8th Street, or Excel, excuse me, that goes up to the ball field, thank you. 8th Street that takes you back over to Assembly. So there's no water and sewer along that entire road. So it stops at the Otness's house, and of course, then it picks up, or it's established in, as we were talking about earlier, the Assembly of God Church or Lighthouse Church. So unfortunately, I had hoped that they were running through that road, but they weren't, because then it would make it easier to develop those huge swaths that the borough currently owns and is on multifamily. So someone could build a 9-unit apartment complex on one of those pieces. So that does play into quite a bit of the development, is that we don't have water and sewer technically nearby. Although I still would like to, you know, whether it takes care of, I would guess, say, you know, if it was to be able to get developed for manufactured homes, then you're looking at I would say midterm. You've got lots for single family home. That's a long-term solution, because it's going to take a year or two to get a house built or longer. Manufactured, you're looking at, but from the time someone orders it to being done is 4 to 6 months. So you have a short-term solution to some housing. And then, of course, I know we have a even short, potentially shorter, it's more crisis. But I was looking for like medium, something that we're not waiting a year out. If it could actually be developed this summer, but it's a pipe dream of mine. But
Well, if you had a concept like that, that we could flesh out a little bit more, you know, you can make, we can make a recommendation that this area be looked at since it's already has zoning. So you don't have to go through and rezone it. Look at how much it would cost to put in the services in that area if it's feasible. That would be a Carl question. And that hasn't been on our list, at least one that the assembly hasn't put out there. To have P and D look at. And do you know where we're talking about, Carl?
Yeah, I believe so, between Excel Street and the Augusta Street lot that we were just talking about.
Yeah, it's currently zoned multifamily, I believe, which means you wouldn't have to go through and rezone it, which is a hassle if you do anything next to anybody else in town. You know, so, you know, if that's the concept that we want to look at, then let's make that recommendation to the assembly. And, you know, we can word it so that we look with emphasis on developing this for a manufactured home area or something like that. And then, you know, and then the next step would be talk to Carl, then talk to Liz and see what sort of lot size, because we wouldn't necessarily have to have the same lot size.
no, that's where I looked at our own rental that's up on Fram Street, and it's on a 50 by 100 lot, and the home is essentially the length and width of a double wide trailer. A footprint, so it's very similar, within a few feet, and there's 40 feet on the back end. It was built too close to the roadway in 1933. But if you were to even move it back and have that 10-foot, I guess you got to pick 20 and 10, right? You can vacate one corner if you're on a corner. So if we were to do that, if we were to build that house now on that lot and were to adhere to those setbacks, the house would still fit within those required setbacks. So that's where I was looking at it. So I thought visually, I'm a visual person, so I like to go see what it looks like. So if you put that house on a 50 by 100, you put a manufactured home on a 50 by 100, how much space, outdoor space does someone get? And seems to be plenty, you know, for most people would be. So that's why I was thinking if you could put manufactured homes on 50 by 100, as long as they're not getting any larger than a double wide. Yeah, they're either single or double, and that would provide enough space around each one. I also looked up the codes for the borough to see what requirements are, and the requirements are quite minimal. It's just tie them down, make sure they're not going to float off. They have to be high enough for a floodplain, so they're not getting flood insurance. And so it was pretty, just put your home on there and make sure you meet these few requirements, because I think the idea is that they're already constructed, so they're not getting into the construction side of things. It's setting the home, tying it down, making sure you have, you're above the base flood elevation. So
Did it say anything about having to have a foundation?
it specified certain things that it had to be, depending on the zoning. And so that's where I think you could kind of probably, but I would almost make it, I would want to see if it was done and those were privately sold by the borough to individuals, that it would be a permanent foundation. The intent would be the home would not move again. It's going on a permanent foundation, and to get financing, it has to be on a permanent foundation and skirted. So there's some of those requirements that would kind of be, you know, unless someone's paying cash.
Carl, have you guys ever been out in that, you know, it's those, you know, when you leave what's the street that goes to the ballpark? Is that Excel? And then you turn at Ottis's and you head towards the assembly, drops down in the dip where the trail goes to the elementary school. Then when you come up the other side, it's all nice and flat on both sides of it. Have you guys ever done any probing out in there? You know,
No, not that I'm aware of.
So
okay.
she's talking about this extension, and that the Ottis is the last house, or the only house on that street that has utilities. What's the likelihood that from that side of the street that there would be acceptable tie-ins to make improvements to those lots, to put in water and sewer to some of those lots going towards the lighthouse?
There aren't any, because the Onnes's have private utilities. They're small diameter. They're not mains that go
Okay.
that far. They've paid to basically connect all the way to Excel Street. And the gentleman that's on the other side of the street that has a foundation laid right now, waiting for a house to be put on, he did the same thing. So there aren't any mains that far. We'd have to start at Excel Street and extend mains down that way. And one of the estimates that subdivision estimates we did do with PND was that those large multifamily lots just past that point. And I mean, they're right there, but you know, it's still pretty costly just because of the way the land lays, and getting sewer back to Excel Street is where it would have to go. And that means a pump station and, you know, extra expense. So it seems like there's some a good solution there, but it's harder than it seems.
So if the water and sewer went the other way, then it would have to, like you said, those services by the Augusta lot, those are old, and you'd want to take it all the way down. So it'd have to go clear down almost to Wrangell Avenue, basically.
Well, to the top of Goffin Street. So those mains are new. The three-way intersection between Goffin, Valkyrie and Oslog. They're good mains right there.
Think that would do away with the pump station, not having to go down in that dip and back up if you're just doing the top part?
It'd be interesting to see how far we could go down 8th Street with the gravity sewer from that point, from Lake Street, essentially. Might not make it that far.
Yeah.
It does drop off as you go down in that gully, unfortunately. It's got to run downhill.
Carl, do you know of any place in town that would be, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've looked at the maps. Is there some place that we're missing, some place that we should be looking at? That would be, that we could put in something like what we're talking about, an area for manufactured homes?
You know, I think we covered a lot of the easy answer areas in the subdivision estimates with PND. The area up off of Lumber Street, that whole area behind there is zoned for mobile homes right now. And so developing back there kind of makes sense in what we're talking about here. Further, it could be because there's a trailer park already on Lumber Street. You know, if the borough looked at those parcels that are off and undeveloped right now as a tract of land for, say, you know, to offer up to developer to develop a park, you know, you could potentially sell a large chunk of land and have the property owner, the new property owner, develop that as the mobile home specs and offer up spaces, you know, for that kind of thing. But it is going to be expensive, you know, for whoever does that. But if the land is cheap enough, maybe they can do it. Long-term, you know, payback on something that I have no idea what a long-term payback is on a mobile home park, but it's bound to be pretty decent.
I'd personally be opposed to another mobile home park. I think a lot of people that I've interacted with that are living in those areas continue to struggle because they have to pay the lot rent, and it never gets to the point where you own it. And that, I think, having ownership is really a big difference in how you upkeep things and how you feel really welcome in the community. And so I think it would be really nice if we could find some places where we could put some homes in, or maybe the conditional use process idea, you know, if your neighbors don't seem to mind you putting in a manufactured home and you can get that approval, why not? So.
Can legitimately say historically, the mobile home parks in Petersburg have not been kept up to a standard that the owners of the land should be. I have seen some beautiful ones in Washington, and it's pretty frustrating to go through the couple that we do, 3 that we have in our community, and things just aren't. There isn't any attempt to have some standards. Not that you would necessarily have that in a private one, but like, I think you can statistically prove that when you own something, you tend to maintain it. And you have some you know, you have not only financial buy-in, but mental buy-in when you own your land as well as your home.
And you have equity for
Right.
getting out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
Nope, that's.
Okay. And that. Yeah, you were actually.
Now we got the land trust up next.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know
anything
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm not the right
Excuse me, I'll put on my glasses. That helps. Either that or I need really big print. Okay, yes, sorry. Yes.
That's all right. So we had a subcommittee meeting last week. Went over a couple more details of this, for those of you who might not be aware. There are a couple of land trusts in the state of Alaska. The specific one that we that I have more familiarity with is the Sitka Land Trust, where the community or the borough there has deeded property to a nonprofit trust that has then gone out and gotten grants from Search, from the Rasmussen Group, and from a federal agency to put in utilities, to actually make the subdivision, put in the utilities and make it ready for actual improvements. The trust retains ownership of the land. The houses are affordable housing, meaning that I think there's 6 different options that people can choose from. They go up to a 4-bedroom house. For instance, if a customer chooses the $250,000 house, the idea is that they're in it for a couple of years. They move on, the appraisal is done, they sell it for $300,000. They get to retain 25% of the sales price, and the rest of it refers back to the trust so that they can continue to sell that house at a $250,000 amount. So they're trying to retain the affordability in the land trust. These aren't for everybody. You don't have land ownership. The land will always be owned by the trust. So you have your house and it is your house and you have a loan usually on your house. Those properties can be financed through Alaska Housing. I do not have any financing options through the federal government. It is just a state-run entity at this time that is financing on those. Sitka has, I believe, 6 of them. The first one went very badly. It was a learning experience for everybody, but the rest of them seem to have been working fine. I've talked to the lady in Sitka that handles these transactions. Gary has talked to her. She's extremely informative. They are working on a state land trust. The one thing that she said for the Sitka experience is the administration costs of doing something like this are high. So if you can get a lot of different communities joining forces and having one administrator, that would cut down on the cost to provide this program. It works well for boroughs that have a lot of land. It doesn't necessarily mean that the borough has to come up with the money to make the improvements. The idea is that a lot of this is done through grants or subsidies that they're able to find. It is not a short-term problem solution. I think Sitka said that they worked on this for like 5 or 6 years before they got to the point of actually breaking ground on something. This is not an overnight fix, but it's something to look at for down the road that you have to become involved with now and not 6 years from now. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Does anybody have any questions?
So on but while they're living there, they're paying property tax but only on the value of the home.
Improvements, only on the improvements.
Builds the houses and does the buyer go out and
There's,
contract?
the way that the Sitka Land Trust does it, they have set plans. So in other words, there's no change orders on this stuff. This is it. And they have already gotten the cost estimates from the contractors and have a working relationship with them. Now, Gary, when's the next time you're going to retire?
Never.
Yeah, they told me that they actually had found one contractor that worked with them really, really well, and now they always recommend that one. Cause he never is, over budget, or he knows what the whole thing's about, so that's good for them to find one of those. Cause I guess the first one wasn't like that. So. I loved that idea for a long-term solution. I mean, even these, cause it doesn't have to be one big piece of land and then you start selling every lot or putting all these houses right in a row in a neighborhood. It could be one of these lots we've already identified. And basically the borough gives that to the land trust. And then you get your grant from Rasmussen and whoever, and they get the ground, either fill it with rock or put pilings in. They pay that. And so then the customer, which is picked, there's not just, these people have to apply, and they have a lot of stipulations, like they can't own any other properties. They have a lot of stipulations, and then the administration costs is where that comes in. They pick the people that have the background. They already have to get pre-approved at the bank, all that stuff. And then the trust says, okay, you are going to get to build on this lot. They pick who gets them. And then, and they want them to be people who are going to be paying, their mortgage and not getting booted out. So they're really involved with it. And then once they sell it and it's built and all that, she told me they keep an eye on it because they want to make sure they're taking care of it, because it's going to be back in their pocket again when those people want to move on. Do you know if they have any time limit that they can stay in them? Or can they be there forever?
30-year, I mean, they've got a 30-year mortgage. Technically, they could stay in there for 30 years.
But how would that work if they stayed in there for 30 or 20 or 30 years and paid off their $250,000 loan, and then it's appraised at 300 and they want to sell it? Are they only going to get 25% of?
And they're trying to keep affordability in the makeup of the program. So you're never gonna, the trust is always gonna get their $250,000 back. That's how it's designed.
them
So-
not to
so
be
they
there
get
too long?
They get to resell it
Right.
based on that.
Right.
It's not for everybody. This program is not for those people that can afford their own dirt. It's not designed for that. It's for trying to get people that are median income into a structure without breaking the bank.
So do you have to have a loan in order to live there, or can you, like, if you pay off the house, can you just live there? Okay, it's your house.
Your house, as long
Okay.
as you are owner occupying it, it is an owner occupied loan program. This isn't one of those with Alaska Housing that says you have to occupy it for 6 months or a year. This is a program that you have to occupy it. So this isn't a rental property. This isn't gonna be that kind of a thing. They don't say, gee, you can never go south, but I mean,
John?
Are these contiguous houses or individual by themselves?
the ones that Sitka does, they are individual structures. They're freestanding individual structures.
They're scattered, or they're contiguous?
They are scattered in, right now there's one subdivision that they've got, but Sitka has actually done a couple of individual lots. I don't believe those structures are actually started yet. So the ones that are in the subdivision, the lots that are in the subdivision, there are, I believe, 6 property or units that have started.
How do they handle it?
This is your house. This is your house. Okay, it's their land, but it's your house. I'm sure they have some stipulations regarding, don't be, emptying your crankcase oil on my property type of thing, but in general, this is your house. You own this house. You have the ownership interest in keeping it up to date. I know that Gary just said that they have some rules regarding,
Yeah, they have you pay I think it's a $95 a month fee or $75, I can't remember. And 50 of it, I think, went to administration fees, and the rest of it goes into a fund for the homeowner. And that is supposed to be a maintenance fund for them. So they're kind of forced to save their money for maintenance. So they can't later say, well, I just don't have any money to do that. Well, that's what that fee is for. And it's not a high, it's like $25 a month or 50. And it's kind of a forced savings for their maintenance. And then they have someone else, that's one part of it, they had an HOA, but that was, and I asked her, what is that? And she said, that has nothing to do with the trust at all. It's the people that were living there kind of formed their own. Yeah, so that like in the winter when it snows, they all have this guy come and plow out their driveways. And, you know, that's their own thing that they formed, but it's not mandatory from the trust people. So.
Is the homeowner association, not the homeowner, is the land trust a separate entity associated with the borough?
It is a separate entity in the same way that Alaska Housing is a separate entity from the state of Alaska. There's an affiliation there because money flows between the two, but it's not, I mean, technically, land trust is its own deal. It's a nonprofit organization, and that's how it qualifies for some of these grants from Rasmussen and the like.
And she told me that they were hoping to get the borough to put them on like a line item to help fund their administrative costs, because she's kind of overseeing the whole thing. And it's a very complex, you know, setup of rules and, you know, getting the right people picked and all that. And so it takes more than one person, and they don't have any way of paying those people. Basically, they don't charge it to the customers because then you're just upping the cost of living again. So she was hoping they could get Sitka to do it as a line item and have their assembly just give them a certain amount of money each year. But what she's really hoping is that they get it to be the state trust, like Joyce said. It'd be the Trust Alaska is what they want to call it, because there's a Trust Montana. Montana has one of these, and it envelops the whole state. And so then they don't need to ask for any, you know, local money from the boroughs or whatever, because it's huge setup and they're getting enough to run it from their own fees, which would be, I think, ideal.
And that's something that, you know, if the borough decides to go forward with that recommendation, or if the body recommends that I would really encourage the borough to get on board early in the process rather than at the very end.
Yeah, because she's leaving her post this spring is what she told me, and working nonstop on getting this Alaska Trust Alaska. So it's at the very beginning of it. And so it would be really neat if somehow we had representation, if they need help or whatever, or just follow the steps that they're taking so that we're ready to do it, because it is a great way. We're lucky here in Petersburg, we have all kinds of borough land, but not the funds to develop it and get people on it cheaply. And this seems like, I mean, they have a little house they offer up that's, I think it's only 640 square feet or something. It's basically a one room with a bedroom and a bathroom and a little kitchen, and, you know, and it's like less than $200,000, and there's your home. And if you can get a bank to loan you $175,000 or whatever it was, because you're taking the cost of the land out and the developing of that land and the sewer and the water and all that. So now you're just paying for your foundation in your house. So I think it's great for entry level or whatever, just get people going. I don't know if you could do it no, you couldn't do it as, I don't know, maybe you could do it as multifamily, but I don't know how that would work. Flexes, you know.
Okay, any more questions? Joyce?
I don't have anything more. Do you guys?
All right, I got my glasses on this time. Annette, actually. Wherever. I know you guys had a meeting.
Yeah, we had two meetings.
You mean,
Seems like a lot of meetings lately, so. What we came up with is really that we need more time and that in order for us to be able to present, because this is a new concept to a lot of the assembly, what we're requesting is that we actually do this presentation and do our ask to the assembly in March at the March meeting instead of in February. And then have Brian Wilson, who's the executive director for the Alaska Coalition on Housing and Homelessness or something like that. Have him come down and do a presentation to the assembly at the February meeting, which I thought there was a meeting February 6th, but I was looking at the calendar and I don't see one on that date. So I was gonna ask, is there a meeting February 6th?
Yes, there is.
Okay,
There is an assembly meeting February 6th
okay,
at noon.
great. So, yeah, I would request that we have him come down and talk about the impacts of homelessness in communities in Alaska, to kind of educate some people, because I think presenting this idea and only having 5 minutes to say, this is what we need to do is people aren't going to be able to understand enough to be able to answer. So that is a request.
And a big thing about the timeline is like for Brian, we have Project Connect coming up in our community, but that's happening nationwide. And so for him and his time, January is like not an option. Because everyone's trying to get everything together for that event.
Well, and I think to piggyback off Ashley is like Project Connect with HUD, getting a lot of the information about the need for this in the community comes from that project. Like getting a lot of information and factual information about the need for this and how many people are affected by homelessness in Petersburg really does come from that event. And not just with Project Connect, but it's all over America. So it'll be interesting to see what the findings come from that. And that's on the 31st of January. So, and I don't think they'll have any of it all back by
turnaround would not
February
be
6th.
within-
So
For sure.
question, the next meeting in February is, I believe it's, the 21st, because the 20th is President's Day. Is that correct?
Correct. After the 6th, it's the 21st. Yes.
So could you guys get hold of Brian and see what
I was
works
gonna
for
be
him?
out of town. I think that was why we were thinking March. Is that why?
Wait, do you mean to have Brian speak at that meeting on the 21st instead?
20, whatever works for his schedule.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's already reached out to him.
Right.
And so
The 6th worked, is that?
About February 6th.
Well, I had said, I think we had said maybe February 6th, but if the 21st works better, then let me know and I will ask him if that works for him. I'm assuming it will be fine, but.
Yeah, so just let me know. So we need to know the Wednesday, no later than the Wednesday before the 21st, so we can put them on the agenda or what's today?
Monday,
Monday,
not
excuse me.
Wednesday.
Excuse me.
That one's the night meeting also, so that,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna impact him or not. Oh, and I'm gonna be.
You don't have an
Yeah.
issue with February 6th, do you, Dave?
No, I don't.
So I think February 6th is fine.
Okay.
If you can just let us know if that will be a for sure thing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
February 6th works great for me.
Okay, let's say that, yes, that's the date, then I will confirm with him, but the email I'd sent was February 6th noon meeting, so.
Okay, and then if he can do it, then let Debbie know ASP so she can get it on the agenda.
With official titles and right spelling of names and all that good stuff, please.
And that will do that.
Yes, she will, I know.
Okay, is there anything else you guys need to tell us?
just that we found some really good information.
Okay. and
Yeah.
then the idea would be then, this won't be in the batch recommendations that we'll be making February 6th, but this would go like in March when we have, after Brian's been here and you guys have more time to get more information, then,
So I wasn't sure like what the deadline of the February 6th was with trying to
no
present everything.
deadline.
My thing was just like, if we don't present everything like at one time, I was worried that then the assembly would be like, oh, well, we're gonna do all these things. And then we come in at the end and they're like, well, we already decided that we're doing these other things. So we're actually very not interested in your plan. So I was just thinking it might be more beneficial to have everything presented all together, was my personal opinion, but I don't know how everyone else feels.
I think it might be overload to, I mean, this is a big lift. And I know personally, I'm gonna have questions like, okay, so we buy this building, how's this gonna work? You know, I mean, I think this is a big deal because this is, I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I would like to see this fleshed out a little bit more than what I think we're gonna have it by February 6th. I think.
But yeah, we're definitely not gonna have all the information. on
Yeah,
February
so
6th.
I would suggest, if you want to have a chance of this flying, you're gonna have to be prepared to answer a lot of really hard questions. And I think it might take a little bit longer than what we might have time for on February 6th, particularly if Ryan comes down and gives a presentation.
But you as a task force can always let the assembly know that you will be bringing more to them in the
Yeah,
future.
that's kind of what I'm thinking,
Yeah,
not like
okay.
getting grouped like separately from everything else.
Right, yeah, no, and then, so, okay, so that's, let's just move on to the housing needs assessment, which is on the agenda for this Monday.
I will.
And Joyce is going to talk.
And somebody else is going to talk on a different subject, right?
Yeah, like I was thinking Ashley or Annette. Okay, and what this is we're asking, okay, sorry, okay, let me start over.
No idea.
Oh, what are
you're
you gonna do?
talking about.
Okay, this is easy. No, it's not easy. Okay, what you guys have said, or at least what I've heard is that we need to do a housing needs assessment. Because that's the thing that we need to unlock federal funds, particularly HUD monies. And to do a housing needs assessment, it's gonna cost somewhere between $50,000 to $70,000 to do that. So what I have on the agenda for this Monday meeting is that proposal to go in front of the assembly for them to vote up or down. And so what all we have the agenda right now is that Joyce and if Ashley or Annette, if one of you wanted to participate, kind of explain the needs of why we need this housing needs assembly to the assembly instead of me just talking about it.
Well, I'm going about it from the financial part of it because that's kind of more my area of expertise. I believe it could be very useful on a crisis housing type of, the data from it would be very helpful for that. So I figured one of you guys could talk about that portion of it.
When is this meeting? Sorry.
17.
This
Oh,
17th.
yeah, sorry.
I was thinking, I was like, that's a holiday.
Yeah, this, next
Is that the
Tuesday.
new
Housing assessment also for like the land trust, would they need, would that be
Yes.
beneficial information to get that?
Well, it would help, with a recommendation of what do we need? What, I can tell you what we need and you guys can tell you, but none of us have the initials after our name and it doesn't mean anything. So.
Like beneficial and different,
Yes.
depending on what avenues.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good because for Rasmussen
Mhm.
funding, for all the funding that Ashley and Annette, like what you got. We need the assessment
Absolutely.
to get any of that.
Yeah.
And it's all gonna help and it's all out there. So
What time is the meeting on the 16th?
6 PM. 17th, it's the 17th.
would it be a bad idea to say, we recommend you get this housing needs assessment done and you pay for it with the money from those lots you sold over there?
Yeah, that's
Housing, right?
Yeah, that's called, there's a lot more money in there than just what they made from those lots. It's what do they call it? The housing,
Property Development Fund.
thank you, Property Development Fund. I was talking to Jody about this topic, today. And she says there's, some ARPA money that she would like to have spent as another option. And, she's a money person. So she can probably better explain the ins and outs of this than I'll be able to. So she's agreed to be at that meeting and I'll just ask her if, how we're gonna pay for this.
Imagine there's gonna be benefits to the borough from this assessment. I mean, not just housing needs. I mean, there's lots of grants might be available once you find out what's going on, what they really think is going on, who really needs the housing, and I think it would be really beneficial to the borough. And it sounds like a lot of money, but in the end, that might come back in the first year.
Well, my concern is, like going in this process, I thought, yeah, I don't need to have a consultant tell me we have a housing problem in Petersburg. But then as we have met and talked about this more, I don't know, do we have a single family housing need? Do we have an affordable housing need? Do we need more rental housing? I mean, my feeling is we need all of these, but I don't feel like I would be in a position to say to anybody on the assembly, well, we need to spend X amount of dollars to do this project because this is the greatest need in town. And so I feel this housing assessment will clarify that, at least in my mind. That's where I'm looking at it from. And then as a side benefit, then I see the value of being able to get other funding like HUD funding, being able to go to the Rasmussen Foundation, other grant programs that are available through the state, and they all require us to have this assessment before we can access those funds.
I believe also that most housing needs assessment, they also include an assessment of like community resources, just like what's available to tap into for like services for the different housing needs that they even figured out, or like what's available within the state. And then they make like recommendations based on like what you have in your community and what you're lacking. So like not only is it just like for housing, but like what is our community lacking in general. So I think it's like a variety of different aspects of things.
So it'd be really good if one of you guys, you can decide who would like to come to the meeting and speak to that as well to the assembly. And then,
When was our last one done? 2016?
yes, and the outfit that is doing it is the same one that did I don't know if any of you guys are involved in the
Comprehensive plan.
comprehensive plan in 2016. It's the same group of consultants. Actually, I corresponded with a lady that actually came down and did it. So they're very familiar with the city. They did this. They might not even need to come to town. They're kind of getting back. Hopefully they'll get back to us before the meeting with a lower price estimate. That's my hope at least, but they did a really good job on the community development plan. So I think they're definitely a good group to go with. Housing needs assessment.
Housing needs
Yeah,
assessment, but
it-
it's included, most housing needs assessments include like the community resources that are being put towards, because housing is a basic need, so they include things like that.
So are we speaking before the meeting, like about the agenda items? Is that what you're asking, or?
No,
during?
we have you on the agenda under boards and commissions. Reports, yes.
So it would be before any action items.
And that would also enable any of the assembly members to ask you questions. Whereas if you spoke before the meeting, we're not supposed to ask you questions.
Under persons to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Oh,
There it
Oh, there you go.
Now it's on.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'd just like to add too that, if the bunkhouse does not get approved, voted in, this housing needs assessment could certainly get that grant money, to purchase that building possibly. So there's a lot to it. I mean, I did a lot of research and just information on grants and stuff, and this could do a lot, not just a bunkhouse or whatever else, but like you were saying, like the land trust for the grants and the subsidies. That's my take on it.
So what I was going to suggest was, if this passes, then, the list of recommendations that we have tonight, we can go forward with those to the assembly. Now, if they vote against doing the housing needs assessment, then I think we'll have to come back to and have another meeting, because I think a couple of our ideas that we're going to recommend to them won't be practical to do. We won't be able to move forward with a land trust or the OBI building purchase, or really be able to unlock any funds to do low-income housing development. So then we'll have to come back and maybe have another meeting, and then maybe just tighten up our recommendation to just do some of the subdivision stuff that we've been talking about. So I'm just trying to do this so we don't waste our time.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay? And then the assembly, if they don't want to do this, and that's, they'll decide that, and then, but if they don't, then we can, then we'll just stop talking about some of these other things. Because our opportunities to fund them will be gone. Okay.
That's how we should end it.
Yeah,
I think I can make that meeting. Jalen, would you be able to attend too? Okay, I think
Absolutely.
that would be good because I know you've done some research on some of the.
Yeah.
grants.
and just short and to the point would be appreciated.
Real good at that.
Okay, good, yeah, I'm not, so that's why I'm asking you guys to do this. Okay, so what we need now is, I need you guys to make some motions of the items that we want to put forward to the assembly.
Do we want to put that not knowing if the housing?
No,
Needs
let's,
assessment is
let's
going
do
to be-
this, I think we're far enough along in the process that we won't have to have another meeting before February 6th, okay? I mean, if you want to wait till after the meeting and do it, that's your guys' call. I can go either way.
Then we just call another meeting in order for you guys to decide what you want to bring to the assembly.
Well, go ahead.
Well, you're just looking for a recommendation for that agenda on February 6th.
Yes,
Yes.
You're not turning green. Will you pick
Well,
it
the
up?
thing's turning green here.
Oh, okay.
The bottom one is.
Maybe I can't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the February 6th meeting?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
and then what I would, then we'll get an idea from the assembly, the ideas that they're interested in or not interested in. And then if they're interested in an idea, then we'll come back. If they want us to flush it out some more, then we'll do it. Or if they just want to run with it on their own, they can do it. But what I'm doing is I'm seeking guidance from them and direction, so we don't just keep meeting for the next year, which we could easily do on this topic. So that's kind of where I'm at.
How specific do we need to be? Like,
It's something-
I love, Sarah's one saying, hey, let's bring water from down here on whatever he called that street, up Oslog Street. Wrap it around the Assembly of God Church and put in a place for mobile homes.
Well, what I would say we could do, one would be, develop, a manufactured home, develop an area in the community specifically for manufactured homes. We could be as broad as that. And then if they like that idea, then we can start fleshing it out with specific details on where we're gonna run water pipes at and, how we'd structure the lots and things of that nature, which I think would require quite a bit of work.
We specify service area 1.
In service area 1, okay, that's fine. I think all these recommendations are gonna be for service area 1.
I would like to, and then also somehow recommend that we develop the lots that are there already.
That's, okay, that's a good one. Do we have a second?
Prioritized? Would you prioritize that list?
Me?
No, wait. No. Yeah, would somebody prioritize them so we know where to start?
Those that are within 50 feet.
Oh. Well, I've given Carl the list of the ones available and he's given me back ones that have the closest sewer. So I guess I would say, yeah, the ones that are the easiest to develop. That's why I was asking him, is that something that just the borough guys can do and put it in as a budget item or what? But I think we need to get those. I'd like to somehow say, we have several lots that are easily developed or easy to get services to, and it needs to be done and it should be done right away. But I don't know how to say that, so.
Maybe what we could do, Gary, especially since I think it was Carl who said Jody suggested another lot that's not on the list. Maybe we could ask Carl to give us a list of what properties from your list and whatever other lot he was talking about that he thinks could easily be prepared for development, get property to, and then we could make that into the motion. I mean, we'll just say whatever Carl provides us.
He did say to Joyce, I think that, for one of us, that he thought they might be able to squeeze in a couple
That
this
log one?
summer.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay.
so we have a motion on the table to have Carl identify easily developable lots or lots that could be developed within the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. do I
Our
have a
motion
second?
is to have him identify those. That's the only motion, right? Not that he will be, or that we're recommending that he does this, just that he's identifying it.
In order for the task force to bring those properties as a proposal before the assembly. We'll add that to the end.
Well, does that have to be then a second meeting for us to come and
I wouldn't
No.
think
Okay.
so.
No,
okay.
Carl will just,
present those?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, he'll just present those to the assembly.
Shouldn't it? But I think like even if he has lots that could be developed in the next 2 years, they could get sold sooner rather than later. So the borough has
Right.
the money, knowing that in next year's fiscal year, they could actually do the work. But they would have had the money up front from the sale of the lot.
So rather than 6 months, 2 years?
2 years, I don't care. I mean, I'm just trying to
I'm
get something
trying to
done.
think About it, cash flow, let's sell the lots, and now I'm making a promise or a commitment in the next 12 months, utilities will be brought to the front of your lot, but we have the funds to help subsidize that. The borough gets the funds ahead of time to help subsidize that, especially if it's,
I see what you're talking about.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking of it as.
We
just
will
like-
do it later.
Or, there's some that can be done right away, obviously, but others, maybe it's, no, we can't do it in this fiscal year, but we can do it next year. But why delay selling it until the following year?
I don't have the number, but there's quite a bit of money in the property development.
Okay.
fund. I mean, there's. a-
Okay, so it
there-
could be done
there-
sooner rather than later.
It could be done sooner than later if the will's there to do it.
Okay,
And that's
Okay,
an
then I'll-
assembly call if they want to spend money out of the property development fund to pay for a contractor, pay for public works, however they deem to get these lots available so that Gary can build houses on them this summer.
Well, because if Carl's, right, and he's like some of these, he said he thought, like the one at the end of Lake Street, that could be $20,000. They'd have that water on their property line and it's now ready to sell. Well, but they gotta have, if the borough's gonna do it, he said they can only do 2 maybe this year if they have the time. But then they could maybe bid it out, somebody else do it. If we can keep these projects at 20 to 30,000, there's plenty of money in that fund to do 3 of them this summer. I mean,
There's a lot of money. I want to say the last time I looked, there's like $600,000. So
Very
it's not,
doable.
it's a doable thing. It's just whether the assembly has to tell Carl to do it. Okay, so what we need is Debbie's a lot better at this than I am. We need to have a motion to direct Carl to identify and develop,
How about,
that's a clerical question. Do you want us to vote on each individual recommendation?
yes, we
Okay.
should.
yes.
Okay.
So ask Utility Director Hagerman to identify easily developable lots that can be taken care of within the next 6 months to a year, whatever you guys decide. And present those to the assembly for approval to do so.
Can we add in a caveat that anyone who buys these lots, or can we is that a separate motion? I just don't want people to buy them and then sit on them because that's not addressing the problems that we're facing. So like,
I agree, but I think that can,
is that separate?
the first
motion?
step is we want to develop the lots.
Okay.
Right, and then the next one, then the assembly can come back upon our further recommendation that these if that's your guys' will, that these be made available under whatever stipulations.
maybe we should give them 8 months,
Pardon?
8 months instead of 6.
Okay,
That's into September and that's kind of the last month you want to be digging.
There you
in the
go.
ground.
okay, all right.
And I have the motion made by Gary and seconded by Sarah, if that's all right with you guys.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, let's,
Do the roll call?
oh, I don't know.
Can I have a discussion? I'm really sorry.
Yes.
If he doesn't find that any of these properties are, that they are going to be able to do this within a year's time, is there anything that says we can go back and say, well, why don't we would just put them up for sale without the utilities into it?
That would probably be the call of the assembly. All we're doing is making a
Okay.
recommendation for the assembly to get in gear and direct Carl to look at these lots and make them available if possible. And then all the other stuff, the assembly can say, well, we got more questions, what I'm seeking is guidance from everybody on the assembly on what they want us to flush out, what they don't want us to do. Okay, that's it right now. And once they have that, then we have our marching orders to do or not do. If that makes any sense.
So Joyce, are you asking, do you think we should put them up for sale first?
I'm thinking that if it's nothing personal, but when government gets involved, everything goes like a snail. And
Yeah.
if our idea here is to get some lots out there for people that can actually, get them and start their construction progress, they're probably better, faster, able to get their utilities in than the government body is. That's my thought, is that it's sometimes a lot quicker process when a homeowner has, their own skin in the game and they're calling the Rock and Road and the Reed Brothers every day saying, get me on your list.
So why not just put them up for sale?
Well, it raises the cost.
Okay.
If the person's gonna buy the lot, they wanna get it as cheap as possible. Now they're gonna have to spend another 40 grand to get their water and sewer to their property line. And then into the house, it's gonna be even more. So my thought is let the borough get it there. It's gonna save that homeowner the 30, 40 grand or the 20, 30 grand, whatever. That's how we keep the costs down. That's the only reason I would like to see the borough put it there. Because like Carl said in his response to my questions, that is the borough's responsibility, or it has been, is to provide water and sewer to your property line. So, but like Joyce said, if you want to just get rid of it, and then that would come into how we sell it. And if there's people that got the money, then yeah, sell it to them, but that's not gonna help the first time buyers, because they're saving every $1,000 counts. But that's the only thing I see.
So what I would anticipate is then after, if they like this idea, then all these follow-on steps that we're talking about, then we would talk about that in detail, unless the assembly wants to do it. And they want to say, okay, we want to make these, for first-time home buyers, we want to have these be people that don't own any other properties. They can, through ordinance, we can put those stipulations in on these sales, correct?
Yes, I believe so. There is something in the ordinance right now that says the assembly can put conditions on a sale. I would have to look at that and see if these would be those kinds of conditions. If they're not, then it would just be, we'd have to bring an ordinance before the assembly to amend the ordinance to add something in that would allow this to happen, when the assembly chooses it to happen. But that would be a 3-reading ordinance to make that happen.
Well, that's what we're talking about. So we don't end up with a situation like we did this last year where where we would put in stipulations like, first time home buyer, not owning property anywhere else. I mean, there's any number of things we could put in there. Yeah, we can do that right now.
Yeah.
We can decide when a piece of property comes up, whether to do it for sealed bid or outcry. Yeah, we can do that under the existing ordinance. I know that. That's
Yes.
very little that I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so does everybody understand what we're voting on here? You want to do a roll call?
Sure.
Okay.
Gary,
Yes.
Annette, Joyce, Larry,
Yes.
it's okay, Sarah, Ashley, David,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jalen? Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, then I would think another one that would be ripe for discussion and a motion would be on manufactured housing park development. So does anybody want to help wordsmith something to that effect?
I already have written down, develop an area within service area one, specifically for manufactured homes.
I think that sounds wonderful.
Who wants to make the motion?
Sure, I'll make it.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
I would think, no, I don't know.
I would think it could be open if, as long as they
Yeah.
were gonna sell, I mean, I guess for me personally, I would like them to see, if private enterprise develops it, that they sell the lots to the individual owners, not, it doesn't become another. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we creating an opportunity for private enterprise to develop manufactured homes? Or is the borough going into the housing market?
I don't think this was ever meant to be the borough is gonna buy manufactured homes and put them on lots. That
No,
was
it's
not-
basically a manufactured housing community subdivision. Specifically, so instead of building single-family homes and buying the individual lots to build a single-family home, you're buying a lot from the borough to put a manufactured home on.
Okay, so basically what you're doing is taking some of those larger tracts of borough property and designating it for manufactured homes.
Yeah, and the reason why I picked that was because of its location. I mean, when I looked all over the borough map, and because it's currently zoned as multifamily already. So you could put in, like I said, it up to a 9-unit apartment complex, or you could rezone it for manufactured housing and put 9 homes or however many homes that would logically fit. So that's where I was coming up with that idea originally. So the intent is just to develop a subdivision specific for that type of housing.
And see, my experience on planning and zoning was very difficult. Like we tried to change the zoning in town so that you could put a manufactured home if it met certain standards on any residential lot in town. And that was not received well. And that's an understatement. So the concept behind this was to create an area that we're not building next to somebody else right now, but an area that would be specifically designated for manufactured homes. And my concept was either the borough would develop the land and sell the lots to the individual people that would buy it, or if a contractor wanted to come in and take it over. Any of those could happen. But it would probably require some HUD money and some other grant money to make it happen, I would think, to keep the price low. And I don't know anything about that stuff, so I will defer to you guys.
And the fact that they'd be much smaller lots.
Yeah.
So you'd get more in your area. So it could make it more desirable for a private contractor. Cause now you're not, it's not gonna cost so much to develop a 50 by 100 or 50 by 80 lot as it is for a 88 by 150 or whatever.
Well, another question. So has there been any discussion about attaching covenants to these properties so we can keep the quality?
No, I think probably because we don't have them already with single-family homes, and there hasn't been a consistent enforcement in area 1 of even just single-family home
When-
things.
when
So
we-
I
when
would
we
think it would
looked
be
at it
kind of,
Through
you
the,
could, I guess we just didn't get that far.
when we looked at it through the planning and zoning process, it had the same covenants. Excuse me, they might be a smaller lot size, but they had the same covenants as you would in a single family home. In other
Such
words,
as like, you're not supposed to store commercial gearing on a.
yeah.
That's,
Uh,
yes, that's what I was talking about. It's like, it's not real consistent
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and
But
and there's
could.
regulations about how many structures you can put on it.
Yeah.
Everything that exists now, but if you had a smaller lot size, the setbacks might be different than what you do in a regular standard city lot now.
I would imagine if a private person though purchased the whole thing and then wanted to sell off each individual lot to people to put their manufactured home on, they might have a covenant. But if the borough develops it, maybe the borough would not have, but there are private people in town that have their own subdivisions and they have covenants. But I think that would only fly if it was privately being done by, a private investor.
I mean, the borough does not have to get the money for the land. I mean, if, they could just say, okay, here's this tract of land. Is there a developer in town? They could set up the criteria as what we want to have happen and stuff. I mean, the borough will make money in the long run through property tax where it's not making a cent on it right now.
Right.
So, I mean, that's another way that you can, you could get, that I've thought that you could get the costs down. Because the one thing that Petersburg has and nobody else does in Southeast is land and lots of it. And we're gonna get another 14,000 acres hopefully here in the next, well, hopefully before I'm dead, from the state. They're
I have-
not moving real fast on it, but it'll come sooner or later.
I have a question. Is there any way to stipulate that you cannot have a mobile home park in this
Oh, yeah,
area?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would be in favor of stipulating that this not become a mobile home park, but it is a,
Housing
Manufacturing.
community subdivision.
yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
so do you want to read what
Homeowner
we're
owned.
voting on again here?
Hello? Okay. So, motion made by Sarah, seconded by Joyce to develop an area within Service Area 1 specifically for manufactured homes. All right, I'm gonna go backwards this time. Jaylen,
Aye.
Jeff, David,
Yes,
Ashley,
Yes.
Sarah, Larry,
Yes.
Joyce, Annette,
Yes.
and Gary.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, Joyce, would you like to make wordsmith a motion on the housing land trust?
I move that we, present the borough with a land trust, of joining the Alaska Land Trust. And I'm not sure how else to put that. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe we should just make it real simple. Explore developing a land trust in Petersburg.
Or joining the state.
And with the goal of eventually joining a future,
State.
that might get too confusing. Let's just keep it a land trust. And then Gary, are you gonna be there February 6th? Because Joyce isn't.
February?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna be on point if you guys want to do this, to present this to the assembly. I'll help.
Thing,
The whole thing.
wasn't my idea.
She's not here, so I had to do this. How about that?
Okay,
I'll help. I'll try.
no, yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I think when we talk about it too, like when we're presenting, making sure that we identify like what we saw as being like the longer term plans versus like what are like the short term or more immediate options so that they see like, yes, it's like a lot of things we're presenting, but it's like over like a long period of time.
And different needs.
Yeah.
good point.
Seems to me like all this grant stuff can go through a lot of this that we're working on. So again, I'm a big thing about, that housing needs assessment thing. I just think that can just help us a lot through everything that we've discussed. Just wanted to make that point.
So on the land trust, I have the motion as explore developing a land trust in Petersburg for now, and whoever does bring it before the assembly can explain that, the state, we're trying to get one going for the state, and we would, if so, we would like to join that, blah, blah, blah. But I need a second, please. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Then let's call the roll.
Okay, let's see if I can mix it up. Annette,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Jeff. David,
Yes,
Jaylen,
Yes.
Gary, Joyce, and Sarah.
Yes.
Did I get everybody?
yes.
Hey.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, anything else? We got 3 items.
Do we have to
And-
do the needs assessment one?
Needs assessment, we're gonna do it this next meeting.
It's already
Oh,
on
That's
the
ready.
agenda.
It's a done deal.
Yeah.
And then we'll present. And then I'll say at February 6th meeting, I'll state that we'll be presenting a proposal on the OBI. Well, we're gonna have the guy from the Alaska, Brian there. And as part of that, I'll explain that we're gonna be talking about whether they want to go forward with this once we have more information and it's flushed out at a later date.
Yeah, I just want to report that I did have a meeting with Ray Wheatsbaum, Liz Cabrera, and they are working on getting our insulation minimums changed.
So did he figure that was gonna be a long involved process, or do you think that's just a letter from the city, or?
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be that hard.
Okay.
Excellent. And then I talked to Steve a little bit about the issue on snow loads on commercial buildings. Was there any update on that?
Ray's still working on that, and he got a hold of somebody who was involved in or knew who was involved in setting those standards. And they need to look at them again and recalculate for our area. Because if you go back and look at all the buildings, all the commercial buildings that have been built recently in the library, the fire station, they were all at 60 pound, which is our current, everybody thought that's our current code, not 150. So they've all been built at. And I know that when we built Viking Travel many years ago, that's what it was, and that's what we built it at. So where they came up with this other number, they're trying to track that down and figure it out. And if it needs to be upped a little bit, that'd be fine, but not to 150. So,
And when I talked to Steve, he thought that this was all something that Ray and he could do in-house without having to involve the assembly in it. So, no, I mean, that's what he was hoping, that they could just
well, it's like the
make it
code,
happen.
code for installation. I mean, they're
Yeah.
pretty clear that you can adopt what you want.
Mhm.
You don't absolutely have to follow those ordinances or those codes. You can adopt your own if you're happy with them. And the big question was, well, is there some reason that people would have a problem with a minimum insulation value of R38? And I can't think of any reason why they wouldn't like that, other than they might want to have it even less, but it's worked for us for a long, long time. Of course, none of the old houses you can do that because they just have 2x4 rafters or
Right.
2x6, and you're not gonna get that much in there, but it's what the standard had been for ever, and it's proven to work over the last 28 years. So hopefully they'll go back, because they're talking about raising the wall values to R30, which means you'd be building 2x10 walls. And that's just ridiculous.
Oh. Yeah, that'd be expensive. Yeah, thanks a lot for tracking that down and getting that in motion. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, thanks, guys.
And then.
One example.